So in general, so Elijah's whole narrative, even though I made those points about Hinduism and Buddhism, those terms being like used interchangeably, which at the same time I have some theories on how there's also benefit to that, or I can see where it would come from or whatever. I can understand it, but despite all of that, in broad terms, that his whole narrative, I agree with it. I see that it correlates with the record. Now, this is some other points. So I said Buddhism lightly, and I gave you a spectrum. Talked about the most mystery form of this sort of thinking, and the most closest to what we would approve of. All right. In very broad strokes, you know what I mean? Because even Hinduism, there's no such thing as Hinduism. Hinduism is not a real religion. Hinduism is any religion that the British found in India that was neither Buddhism, Jainism, the Farsi religion, or Islam. If it wasn't one of those known religions, they just dumped it into the Hindu box. Because it's basically means Indian folk religion, Indian tribal religion. And India is huge. So what they're doing over here, now nothing to do with what they're doing here. But yeah, they might. Over those thousands of years, they might share a couple myths, a couple characters. But that character in their religion, in their pantheon, does all of this. It has these powers.
I like that word better than religion.
Pantheon. Yeah. And then over here, and keep in mind, I'm usually in those circles. So I got to use those words. You know what I mean?
You got to use pantheon or religion.
Like religion.
Okay.
Is, but and that's another discussion. But anyway.
Language and culture.
Right. Because this, I'm not like, I don't see the word religion and no, it has its place. But anyway, so there might be connections, but all that falls under this umbrella of Hinduism. In very broad strokes, that spectrum means like Hinduism on the mystery side and Buddhism, like the two extremes would be Hinduism and Buddhism. Again, Hinduism is not a single thing, and everything gets grouped under that. So it's a whole spectrum.
The British does this,
right? I mean, and even nowadays, all these Indians that walk around, I'm a Hindu. They're just saying what the British say.
They colonized,
right? They just then, because if they were really like hardcore, they wouldn't even use such terminology.
So what do you have to kind of substantiate that stance there?
No, this is common. This is general knowledge.
It's general knowledge in terms of like Hinduism is
that Hinduism is a term invented by the British for all the other things that, and I could go into it more, but like get more specific because there's what's orthodox and what's not orthodox, because you have to bear witness to the Vedas, the original Hindu book, and believe that these are revelations from God. Right.
Well, let me just real quick to substantiate this conversation. You are in that part of the world studying religious studies. That's your study. Your background is religious studies.
Religious studies, yeah.
Okay. And you're going for a PhD.
Yeah.
You had the masters already.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're just wrapping up. You're going for your dissertation for
right,
PhD.
Right, indeed.
Okay, and that's the focus in religious studies. Is it
Buddhism?
It's Buddhism. Okay,
right. Focus in Buddhism.
Okay, so add on, God.
So within the Hindu, like the most mystery within the Hindu, within that in the Indian context, right? They're going to believe that the Vedas, those early books from like 1500 BC, that the Aryans brought with them into India, right? They weren't even books because they weren't written down. It's oral. I mean, they're written down now, but it's orally transmitted to this day. They memorize it all.
They memorize it. Some people said it's almost like writing down the lessons. Like some people might write it differently. What you said? Or kind of like...
I don't remember what I said, if I said something like that.
No, I'm talking about like you said about the Vedas were orally
transmitted. So and from what I understand, I'm not an expert in the Vedas. The little bit that I know about them is that there are different schools within them, within those Vedic Brahmins, so that like these group they might chant the chants a little, because it's basically all chants. and they might chant it slightly differently, or something like that. But basically, it's one, and so it's the old Indian system of the caste, the four levels, and the Brahmins are on top. These are the scholars, these are the priests, and you can't do nothing without performing the rituals, right? Within their society, God has to validate everything, but through a ritual, and the rituals can only be performed by Brahmins, and they have no job to do all day except perform rituals. The youth memorize, they learn it from their childhood, and now they have a cultural monopoly. So even the kings are not more powerful than the Brahmins. You see, the Buddha was from the what they call a Kshatriya class now, the kingly caste.
Shakti, you say?
Well, now the modern, like a Hindi pronunciation would be Kshatriya.
Kshatriya.
Yeah.
Okay. I was out there Shakti because that's like, isn't that like female, like something like Shakti?
Oh, there's a Shakti, a one female
Shakti
deity.
and Shiva. Shiva.
Yeah, he's the wife,
Shiva.
one of the wives of Shiva in some certain legends and so on.
Okay, right.
Shiva, but so you got these like gods like Shiva, Krishna. These are original gods that were always there. So whenever you see them with the blue skin, that means blue-black. So they were the original ones. Whereas you have the other gods that the Aryans brought with them, like Brahmin or Indra or whatever, and these are like the most hot. But anyway,
The Aryans would be like the devils, really.
Basically, but it's complex now because it's all mixed. They're like Indians are basically like the same as Puerto Ricans in the sense it's a bunch of different things, right? But you can still see certain strata. Like, here's a little lighter, here's a little darker, here's a little more, this physical feature, here's a little that one. You can tell that, but still, they're mixed now. You can't just light skin equals
now
dick.
Now they are, but like you're talking about like...
Back then, in fact...
Was it the steppes of Eurasia or what's that, we said when the Aryans came and conquered and whatnot.
And they came down into the... First they came down from like what you would see on the map, the Caucasus that we talk about is between the Caspian and the Black Seas. They were probably, I can't remember the map perfectly in my mind, but like east of the Black Sea. So here is like the Caucasus Mountains between the two seas, and east of the Black Sea would be there. And so they came down on there, they rode horses and things like that, and in wagons. The white man is the one who domesticated the horse. He was the one wild enough, I'm gonna get on this thing. You know what I mean? And that's like a tank. We never saw nothing. We're like, yo, what is this? What is these people? Hannibal,
that's according to the story, though. That's according to
what story?
It's according to academia.
But what's according to the story?
That was the white man who was the first one to get on the horse.
I mean, I don't know that there's any evidence that anywhere else that anyone else got on the horse. And there's also more things where he's from Upper Asia, right? Like he's from, and that's just plains. Those people, it's like the Mongolians, these are original people, but they also that horse riding, cattle breeding, meat eating, milk drinking culture. The Mongolians also do that, and they were very warlike. They were original people, but Genghis Khan killed millions. So they're getting culture, even though they're original. They got the melanin, but they still picked up that culture.
That's what I'm saying. Like so the original. I mean, the Caucasians not the founder. That's what I was just getting at, though.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But he preceded them. And I think pretty much, because I watch a lot of these things, and I think pretty much it's pretty much a done deal that it's, they call it the Yamnaya. It's like a certain culture from about 6,000 BC, if I'm not mistaken. And they were the first ones. They were responsible for domesticating the horse, and because the Egyptians, no one rode them. Riding came later, but they strapped them onto wagons. And so the Egyptians, they got that from, like the Hyksos brought that into Egypt. Like that's why the Egyptians in the later dynasties, they ride chariots. Very light chariots, because they're riding on sand and stuff. The chariots can't be heavy, they'll sink down. Right. But these white men, they coming from rocky, they was riding like the and then they riding down, you got to figure them riding down into original lands, people that, and and there's 3 or 4 of them in like half a wagon, getting pulled by like 2 or 4 horses, and these are big, fat, hairy, bearded. They're tall and fat and orange beards, no teeth. They don't wash. You understand what I'm saying? Painted faces and all of that. I'm sure we today can't imagine. This ain't the real white man right now. This is a refined white man, God. We can't understand the horror that our people faced when they first saw this devil coming out the mountains, shrieking like a fucking banshee.
The refined white man, I just like, the people who use,
syringes, God. Not battle axes. Syringes, God. You see what I'm saying? It's a whole different thing. Anyway, they came and they brought, and the whole caste system is to prevent racial intermixing because we started taking their women. So they had a whole code, basically like the same, like what we would call Jim Crow. They had a whole code, the Manusmriti, finally written in about the year, let's say 0 AD or whatever, right around that time. They finally codified like all the penalties, and you got to keep and never let like the lower caste, like the Shudras, like they can't listen to the Vedas. First of all, they can't like we couldn't read in America.
They can't even listen to it.
If they listen to it, they get molten lead poured into their ears. If they can't chant it, if they chant it, they get a glowing hot spike driven through their tongue.
Wow.
Now, then they had to work out the whole caste system. So bust this, God. If you a high level Brahmin, which basically means a high level Aryan, and you make a baby with a low level woman, so if it's basically white male, black female, that baby takes the father's caste. Whereas if you're a black male and one of these high caste white women give it up to you, that baby goes low. And this woman is kicked out.
Oh shit.
And all type of other, like basically it's all slanted that way. It's awesome Francis Crest. You know what I'm saying? It's designed to prevent genetic annihilation. So a lot of us thinking, like Francis Cress Wilson used to talk about where the white man came out the mountains, came out the caves of Europe 500 years ago and explored the world and found out that every 9/10 of the world was black. And that, no, Francis Cress Wilson said 500, she's talking about the European expansion.
Okay.
She's saying 500 years ago, the white man came out of Europe in his boats, the age of exploration, and discovered that the whole world is all original.
You talking about like Christopher Columbus?
Right, Vasco da Gama and all of them. And she said, and then realized that if they intermingle, they loot, the white gets eliminated. So that's why they designed the whole system of racism. And I said, no, this goes back even to, like we would say, 2000 BC, substantiating the lessons now. Talking about the first contact is 2000 BC. So I'm taking, Elijah says it was the first the Jews, then the Greeks, and the Romans. I'm just saying Elijah didn't know enough about Asian history because he didn't throw the Aryans in there. You see what I'm saying? So he knows plenty. Because again, I'm part of, I learned from Paul Guthrie. Minister Freedom is big on this. I know it. And anyone who knows NOI history, I won't say everybody got to agree, but people who study a lot of NOI history, I mean by scholars, are going to pick up the Farad is from Pakistan. It's like one of the most plausible. You know what I'm saying? And because there's things that Elijah quotes from Farad, like Farad said the saying, he hated Hindus. Elijah hates Hindus. He hates Buddhists. He inherited that from Farad. What was Elijah down from Georgia? What do you know about a Hindu? But he hates Hindus. You read his writings. Inherited this from Farad. So Farad told them Hindus are terrible. He said if you have a snake and a Hindu coming down the street, kill the Hindu. That's an old Indian saying.
Yeah.
Farad didn't just pull that out of nowhere. So just based on him spitting that saying, and that's a saying from, I want even not that old, but late 19th century, early 20th century, when there was a lot of revolution in India and a lot of the lower castes were fighting back against the higher upper caste. That saying was floating around. One of the revolutionaries back then used to say it. And so I'm saying Farad was in those circles at that time. The time fits and everything. Late 19th century, early 20th century, Farad being from Pakistan, from India, fighting against, and those Muslims, those Pakistani Muslims, they not only fighting the British as the oppressors, they also fighting the Brahmins as the domestic oppressors of India. So yeah, I'm seeing Farad coming from that, and teaching that to Elijah, a lot of it. But Elijah couldn't have the background to get all of that and grasp it fully. And as much as he could grasp the Quranic and biblical teachings.
You must do your own research, as I did.
If Mecca did this.